ISO, aperture, and shutter speed are the three fundamentals that you will need to know how to nail the lighting in every picture or video that you take. So let's start with aperture. The light needs to go through the lens and go into the camera body and hit the sensor. But there are a couple things that will reduce the amount of light. The first one is the aperture. The aperture you can think of as the pupil of your eye. It's located in the lens, and the wider it goes, the more light is allowed into it, and the more that it closes, the less light will be allowed. The aperture is measured by the f-stop, which is represented by f and a number. So like f5 is the f-stop, or the aperture number. The wider the aperture, the lower the f-stop number will be. Just like the opposite is true, so if it's more closed, then the number will be higher. The aperture is also, very funnily enough, responsible for what's called the bokeh effect. This effect happens naturally with a wide aperture, so we're talking basically f2.8 and lower numbers if you're at close distances. If you're at farther distances, then you can have much more narrow apertures and still get the same idea. Basically what it does is it allows the subject to pop by blurring the background, makes the subject in complete focus, and allows it to be the center of attention. Okay, so that is aperture. The next thing is shutter speed. So light goes through the lens and it can't quite hit the sensor because there is a shutter in the way. The shutter is like a flap with a mirror on it that's in front of the sensor. So when the shutter is closed, the mirror reflects the light coming into the lens and into the viewfinder, which you can either choose to use or not. When you click the button to take a picture, what you're doing is you're actually moving the shutter open. You're opening it is what it's called, the action, to allow light to hit it, and it'll close again from the time that you set. So shutter speed refers entirely to the amount of time that the shutter stays open. Shutter speed is measured in fractions of seconds. So it would be 1 over, let's say, 200. However, most cameras will tend to drop the 1 over portion of it and will just say 200. But shutter speed will always be 1 over a number, unless of course you're getting into seconds, in which if you're doing like long exposure night shots, typically is what that's for, but we're not going to worry about that for now. When a shutter speed is fast, that means the shutter stays open for less time. So 200 is a slower shutter speed, stays open for more time than 500, which will stay open for less time. Now, typically when most people are thinking about shutter speed, they're not thinking about light, although it does greatly affect the light. What they're actually thinking about is how fast is their object moving? How fast is the subject moving? Shutter speed, when you open it up for just a split second, is going to take one still image of an object that is moving, because even if the subject isn't moving, the camera is probably moving at least just a little bit. So you need shutter speed to open up just fast enough to get a nice, clean, crisp image with no motion, with no blur caused by motion, because it's called motion blur. Now, of course, with a higher shutter speed, with a shutter that is going to stay open for less time, less light is going to hit the sensor. So that's how light gets affected, but your primary concern with shutter speed typically is going to be how fast the object is moving. And if your aperture is open all the way and you really don't want to open or make your shutter speed any faster, this is where ISO comes in. ISO is basically artificial light that the camera adds to the picture itself. It's not really a post thing, it's not really a pre thing, it's just kind of a thing. So, but ISO is it has its drawbacks. So a little bit of ISO is totally fine. It's just kind of natural, it is what it is. However, where ISO can get into trouble is if you try to set it too high, then it causes what's called noise in the image or in the video. In either of these instances, in a photo or video, noise is like little grains of sand in the image that's really kind of the best that I can explain it, is like little grains of sand, or it's like what's called like a grainy image. The camera isn't receiving enough light, and therefore the quality gets decreased because of that. So between these three, this is how you come up with lighting. This is how you try to get the best exposure that you possibly can. You have to find the balance between all of these three. And you're going to have to, at some point, either get stronger lights, or if you're outside, you'll have as much light as you want, most likely, unless you're doing night photography, in which case that's a whole nother ball game. But if you start saying, well, I can't make my shutter speed any faster, and my ISO is as high as I want, my aperture is as wide as the lens will allow, then you're going to have to figure something else out. You need more light, because cameras need a ton of light. And of course, like everything, it takes practice to master these, to master all three. And there's a lot of theory that goes behind all of it. And doing a little bit of research, probably in your best interest. But this is ISO, shutter speed, and aperture at its most basic form. And now you should be on your way to creating some pretty great images. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.